The moment someone disrespects you, something ancient wakes up inside your chest. It's not anger. Anger is loud and messy. This is colder, sharper. It's the instinct that whispers you are being tested, that the world is quietly asking whether you are prey or presence. Most people fail this test in the same predictable ways. They explode, proving they can be controlled, or they shrink, proving they can be stepped on. Both reactions broadcast weakness. And weakness is an invitation, not to the kind-hearted, but to those who sense power dynamics, the way predators sense blood in water. The truth most people never learn is that disrespect is rarely about you. It's a probe, a small psychological jab meant to map the terrain of your mind. Are you reactive? Are you needy for approval? Are you desperate to be liked? The one who disrespects you is not always trying to hurt you. Often they are trying to locate your boundaries so they can decide how far they're allowed to go. This is where the game begins. And most people don't even realize they're on the board. There is a reason Machiavelli is still whispered about centuries later. He wasn't teaching cruelty for the sake of cruelty. He was teaching clarity. He observed what actually moves people, not what people pretend moves them. And what moves people, especially those who disrespect others, is power. Not brute force power, psychological power, the power of perception, the power of controlled emotion, the power of being unreadable. When someone disrespects you, your first impulse is to defend your ego, to correct them, to prove them wrong, to reclaim your status in their eyes. That impulse is exactly what gives them leverage. Because the moment you need their respect, you have already surrendered your position. You have placed yourself beneath their judgment. Machiavelli understood that status is not something you argue into existence. It is something you make others feel in your presence. Here is the uncomfortable truth. People don't disrespect those they perceive as dangerous to cross. Not physically dangerous, psychologically dangerous. The kind of person who doesn't erupt when poked. The kind of person whose silence feels heavier than your words. The kind of person who seems untouched by petty games. This is not about being cold or cruel. This is about becoming strategically unbothered. When someone throws disrespect at you, they are handing you a mirror. Your reaction tells them who you are. If you react emotionally, you reveal your buttons. If you over-explain, you reveal your insecurity. If you attack back impulsively, you reveal your lack of control. And control is the currency of psychological dominance. The one who controls their inner world controls the frame of the interaction. Most people think crushing someone mentally means humiliating them in public or cutting them with sharp words. That is theater. Real mental pressure is subtle. It is the slow erosion of someone's certainty about their position over you. It is the quiet reversal of roles where the one who disrespected you begins to question themselves. Not because you shouted louder, but because you moved in ways they could not predict. Machiavelli would never advise you to bark when bitten. He would advise you to make the one who bit you uncertain whether they should ever try again. The most powerful response to disrespect is not immediate retaliation. It is strategic delay. Delay unsettles people. They expect heat. When they get calm, their mind fills the silence with doubt. Did I misjudge them? Did I cross a line? Are they planning something? The mind hates unresolved tension. Silence becomes a pressure chamber. Let's do a quick reality check here. When you are provoked, what is harder for you? Keeping your mouth shut or keeping a straight face? Now, think about the people who intimidate you the most. They are rarely the loudest. They are often the ones who speak the least, but seem to choose their moments with precision. They don't rush to prove themselves. They let others reveal themselves. Disrespectful people rely on predictable emotional reactions. They thrive on the surge of drama. When you deny them that, you starve the behavior. But starving disrespect is only the first layer. The deeper layer is to invert the power dynamic so subtly that they don't realize it's happening until they feel smaller around you. Power is not announced. It is felt. When someone disrespects you, they are trying to lower your perceived value in the social hierarchy. The instinctive response is to fight for your spot. But fighting for your spot frames you as someone who can lose it. The Machiavellian approach is different. You behave as if your position is not up for debate. You do not negotiate your worth. You do not plead your case. You move forward as if their opinion is a small noise in the background of a much larger narrative. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud and fragile. This is quiet certainty. And quiet certainty destabilizes people who operate through disrespect, because their tactics rely on your emotional participation. There is a reason why some people can walk into a room and immediately command a different level of treatment. It's not their status on paper. It's the way they regulate themselves. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't chase validation. They don't flinch at small slights. Their presence communicates that they are internally sovereign. and sovereignty is contagious. When you are sovereign over your reactions, you begin to shape the emotional climate around you. The disrespectful person senses this shift and starts adjusting their behavior, often without realizing why. But there is another layer that Machiavelli would appreciate. Not all disrespect is accidental. Some people test boundaries deliberately. They push because they want to see if you will submit or escalate. If you submit, they learn they can dominate you. If you escalate emotionally, they learn they can control you. The winning move is to neither submit nor explode. It is to respond in a way that reframes the interaction entirely. Sometimes this means responding with calm curiosity, not the fake kind, the kind that makes them feel exposed. When someone disrespects you and you respond with a simple, unbothered question that reflects their behavior back at them, you shift the spotlight. You are no longer the target. They are the subject. People who rely on disrespect hate being examined. They prefer to be the examiner. The moment you turn the lens on them, they feel the subtle loss of control. Another strategy is strategic indifference. Not the performative kind where you pretend not to care while secretly boiling inside. The genuine kind where you have already decided that certain behaviors do not deserve your emotional energy. Indifference is powerful because it denies the other person the emotional payoff they were seeking. Disrespect is often a bid for reaction. When the bid fails, the behavior loses its reward. Over time, people either escalate their tactics or retreat. Both outcomes reveal their hand. Escalation exposes insecurity. Retreat restores your position. Either way, you gain information, and information is leverage. Machiavelli believed that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But fear does not mean terror. It means being perceived as someone who cannot be easily manipulated or crossed without consequence. Consequence does not always mean punishment. Sometimes the consequence is social recalibration. You stop giving access. You stop providing emotional reactions. You stop offering your presence freely. Scarcity changes value. When someone disrespects you and you quietly reduce their access to you, you communicate that their behavior has costs. Not through lectures, through absence. Absence is a powerful teacher. It forces reflection. The human mind fills gaps with stories. When you remove yourself from someone who disrespects you, they begin to wonder why. That wondering shifts the dynamic. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They want immediate justice, immediate recognition, immediate validation. But psychological dominance is not built on immediacy. It is built on consistency, on becoming someone whose emotional reactions are not available for cheap manipulation. When you consistently respond to disrespect with composure, boundaries, and strategic distance, you rewire how people approach you. They begin to treat you differently because you have trained them to, not with threats, with patterns. There is a paradox here. The more you try to force respect, the less you receive. The less you chase respect, the more naturally it arises. Respect is drawn to those who seem to need it the least. Because need signals vulnerability, and vulnerability when displayed in the wrong arenas invites exploitation. This does not mean becoming closed off or cold-hearted. It means choosing where you invest your emotional openness. Machiavelli was not anti-connection. He was anti-naivety. He understood that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people will use what they learn about you as leverage. Disrespect often begins after someone has learned your sensitivities. This is why the wise reveal themselves slowly. They let trust be earned through consistent behavior, not words. When you master your internal responses, something interesting happens. The person who disrespected you begins to feel a subtle discomfort. Not because you attacked them, but because the dynamic they expected did not play out. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. When a pattern breaks, the mind becomes alert. This alertness can turn into self-consciousness. They begin to monitor their own behavior around you. They become more careful with their words, not because you demanded respect, but because your presence recalibrated the psychological terrain. This is mental pressure, quiet, persistent, effective. There is also the strategic use of contrast. When someone disrespects you and you continue to treat them with calm neutrality while elevating your behavior with others, you create a social mirror. They see themselves reflected not in your anger, but in your selective engagement. They notice that others receive your warmth, your attention, your energy, while they receive restraint. This contrast is psychologically potent. It signals that their behavior has placed them in a lower tier of access. Social creatures are highly sensitive to relative status. When someone senses their access has been downgraded, it can trigger a desire to repair their standing, not because you ask them to, but because status loss is uncomfortable. The final layer is internal. Crushing someone mentally is not about dominating them externally. It is about becoming internally unshakable. When you are unshakable, The person trying to disrespect you ends up wrestling with their own reflection. Their tactics fail. Their jabs fall flat. Their provocations meet calm. Over time, they either adjust or drift away. Both outcomes serve you. You are no longer spending energy managing their behavior. You are conserving energy for building your own position in the world. This is the quiet victory Machiavelli would respect. Not the loud conquest, but the invisible one, where you reshape the battlefield by changing who you are on it. And the moment you realize that disrespect is not an insult, but an opportunity to refine your inner authority, the game changes. You stop seeing slights as wounds and start seeing them as data. Data about the other person, data about your own triggers, data about where you still seek validation. Each moment of disrespect becomes a training ground for self-mastery, and self-mastery is the foundation of all psychological power. The one who cannot be easily provoked cannot be easily controlled. The one who cannot be easily controlled becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability when paired with calm is what makes others tread carefully around you. From this point forward, the battlefield is no longer between you and the person who disrespected you. It's inside your own mind. If you can govern your internal state, you dictate the tempo of every external interaction. This is where most people fail. They think mental dominance is about what you say to others when in reality it begins with what you allow to echo inside your own head after the disrespect has happened. The insult is brief. The replay in your mind is what gives it power. If you replay it over and over, you grant the other person residency in your psyche. Machiavelli would call this a strategic blunder. Why offer free territory to someone who has shown you disrespect? The first move is eviction. You acknowledge what happened, extract the lesson, and then refuse to let the event define your emotional state. This is not suppression, this is selection. You choose which thoughts deserve your energy. Once you master this, you begin to notice how much of social life is theater. People posture. They perform strength, they test reactions. Many who disrespect others are not powerful at all. They are anxious performers, trying to establish dominance in a world that makes them feel small. Understanding this does not mean excusing the behavior. It means you stop personalizing it. When you stop personalizing disrespect, you stop bleeding energy into the wrong places. Energy is finite. Those who waste it on petty battles end up exhausted and reactive. Those who conserve it appear calm and formidable. Calm is not weakness. Calm is a sign of resources. Only those who feel internally scarce need to constantly assert themselves. Now comes the strategic layer. You don't confront every slight. You choose your moments with intention. Machiavelli observed that timing can be more powerful than force. If you respond to every provocation, you become predictable. Predictability is exploitable. The person who disrespects you learns their rhythm. They learn which buttons to press to get which reactions. When you vary your responses, when you sometimes let things pass and sometimes draw a boundary with quiet firmness, you disrupt their sense of control. They no longer know which version of you they will encounter. This uncertainty creates hesitation. Hesitation is leverage. People are less likely to disrespect those they cannot easily map. Boundaries, when drawn, must be clean, not emotional, not dramatic. Clean boundaries communicate strength. You state what is acceptable and what is not without raising your voice, without over-explaining, without justifying your worth. Over-explanation is a tell. It reveals that you are trying to convince rather than declare. Declaration assumes authority. When you calmly state a boundary and then follow through with consistent action, you teach others how to treat you. This is not about controlling them. It's about controlling your access. Access is power. You decide who gets proximity to your time, your attention, your presence. Those who disrespect you should feel a natural reduction in that access, not as revenge, as alignment. People who respect you are aligned with your standards. People who disrespect you are not. You simply move accordingly. There is also the strategic use of elevation. Instead of trying to lower the person who disrespected you, you raise your own trajectory. You focus on becoming visibly more competent, more composed, more selective. This creates a quiet contrast that does more psychological work than insults ever could. When someone sees you rising while their tactics fail to provoke you, it creates cognitive dissonance. They expected to destabilize you. Instead, you appear unaffected and even improved. This dissonance forces the mind to re-evaluate assumptions. They either conclude that you are not easily influenced by them or that they misjudged your status. Either conclusion benefits you. Machiavelli understood that reputation is a form of power. Not the reputation you announce, but the reputation that forms through patterns of behavior. When others observe that you do not tolerate disrespect, yet you do not engage in petty conflicts, your reputation becomes one of quiet firmness. People begin to think twice before testing you. Not because you are feared in a dramatic sense, but because you are known to be emotionally self-possessed. Emotional self-possession is intimidating to those who rely on emotional chaos to gain leverage. They thrive in turbulence, you deny them turbulence. This denial is a form of control. Another subtle tactic is reframing. When someone disrespects you, they often try to frame the interaction as you versus them. You can dissolve this frame by not accepting the premise. You don't step into the duel. You step outside it. You behave as if the interaction is not a personal contest, but a moment revealing something about the other person's internal state. This reframing shifts the emotional weight. You are no longer defending yourself, you are observing. Observation creates distance. Distance creates clarity, and clarity is power. The more clearly you see the dynamics at play, the less likely you are to be pulled into someone else's emotional agenda. There is a quiet cruelty in clarity. Not cruelty toward others, but cruelty toward illusions. You stop pretending that everyone has good intentions. You stop pretending that disrespect is accidental when patterns repeat. You stop pretending that people will change simply because you explain how they made you feel. Machiavelli was skeptical of such optimism. He believed in responding to people as they are, not as you wish them to be. This does not mean becoming cynical. It means becoming realistic. Realism protects your energy. It prevents you from overinvesting in those who have shown you their character through repeated actions. When you combine realism with composure, you begin to project an aura of internal authority. Authority is not about domination. It is about coherence. Your words align with your actions. Your boundaries align with your behavior. Your reactions align with your values. This coherence makes you hard to manipulate. Manipulation thrives on inconsistency. When you are inconsistent, people learn how to exploit your moments of weakness. When you are consistent, they learn that certain behaviors simply do not work on you. Over time, this reshapes how they interact with you. Even those who once disrespected you begin to adjust their tone, often unconsciously. There is a deeper psychological effect at play. When you do not react as expected, you force the other person to confront their own intentions. They may have wanted to provoke you to feel powerful. When that fails, the feeling of power evaporates. They are left with the raw fact of their behavior. This can trigger self-awareness or defensiveness. Either way, the power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer the emotional supplier. They are facing the emptiness of their tactic. This is mental pressure, not through aggression, but through refusal to participate in a rigged emotional game. And then there is the ultimate move. You detach your self-worth from how others treat you. This is not apathy. This is sovereignty. When your self-worth is internally anchored, disrespect loses its sting. Without sting, there is no hook. Without a hook, there is no control. The person who disrespects you is fishing for a reaction. When you do not bite, they either change bait or leave the water. Both outcomes free you. You are no longer spending your mental energy swimming around someone else's lure. The irony is that the moment you no longer need to crush someone mentally, you become capable of doing so without effort. Not because you seek to dominate, but because your internal stability creates an external gravitational pull. People orbit around those who are grounded. Those who disrespect grounded individuals often feel a subtle sense of smallness in contrast. Not because they are humiliated, but because the contrast highlights their own instability. Stability exposes chaos, calm exposes agitation. This exposure is uncomfortable. Many will correct their behavior to escape that discomfort. Others will withdraw. Either way, your position strengthens without a single harsh word. The real victory is not in making the other person feel small. It is in becoming so internally large that their disrespect cannot reach your core. When your core is intact, your actions become deliberate rather than reactive. You choose when to engage. You choose when to withdraw. You choose when to draw a line. This choice is freedom, and freedom is the foundation of power. Machiavelli would not admire the one who wins every argument. He would admire the one who rarely needs to argue because their presence alone reshapes the room.